The IPPAI's 12th Regulators and Policymakers retreat aims to break down paradoxes of India as senior policy planners from the government, regulatory authorities and industry converge to discuss and look for solutions to these challenges. We are back to Goa this week to bring you more insights and views.
Hello everyone and welcome to this special session on urban splendor, urban squalor, and I think we know what we are seeing around us. Big question, I guess, is how we can actually fix it and fix it in a fairly time-bound manner, especially given the fact that urban population continues to grow up, to grow year by year, month by month almost. And I just want to raise one of the related issues to that and perhaps get all of your quick reactions to that, which is the laws that we have. Many people, when you ask that why are our cities the way they are, it's because there's a certain set of laws that are almost there to keep the cities like this, and which nobody wants to change because it suits them perfectly well. I'm talking about whether it's the land, whether it's a Rent Control Act, Land Ceiling Act. There are a number of laws that are there which just about everyone has to violate. Somebody was telling me that in Delhi, something like 84% of all buildings are in some way or the other illegal. It's much simpler, much easier to have simple, easy laws which everyone can follow, which can clean up the city really fast. But if you bring those laws, then the rent-seeking behavior of the people in power would tend to vanish. How correct and how true is this?
Absolutely correct. The Urban Land Ceiling Act, enacted in 1976, had to be virtually forced by the central government to be abolished by the state governments. Everybody knows that this particular act was essentially for rent ceiling. Just about 5% of the land that was actually acquired under the Urban Land Ceiling Act went for the purpose for which it was acquired. Most of the other lands which went was released from the clutches of the act through the rent-seeking behavior. Similarly, Mumbai, for example, in the 70s, particularly in the city of Mumbai, when the population of Mumbai was 70 lakhs, there was a law that was development control regulations were amended to say that Mumbai is now becoming far too big, and one way of controlling the population of the city of Mumbai is to reduce the FSI. What has happened because of that is that the market has come and stepped in, created slums as a market response to a government failure. Slums, I would say, per se, is not really a problem. Slum is a perfectly good solution to a government failure. The government was not in a position to allow the poor people to build houses. They took away the lands under the Urban Land Ceiling Act, and now when the poor came in, they had no place to live. Then the local slum lords, let's say, they created a private market to say, come and settle on these lands, which were made surplus by the government. And that's how slumification of Mumbai actually happened. But I know for a fact that any regulation that is to be changed for the good or worse of the city of Mumbai is not taken by the city, it's actually taken by Mantralaya. They have no interest in the city of Mumbai. The key would be, the solution would be actually to empower the city.
But of course the problem is always what are the powers, how do you divide the powers, because even a city like Delhi, the problem is that though you have an elected chief minister, there's always a question as to what powers does she have, what powers does the lieutenant governor have, what powers does the urban development ministry has, who controls the DDA, who doesn't control them, who controls the NDMC. So the division of powers is always a big problem. And let me throw another problem to you, which is that the minister says, well, I may want to do this, but the minute I do this, you're going to have somebody or the other banging on the table, on the 9 o'clock news saying that, it's a scam. How much money have you taken to regularize all of this? So that's the second problem.
Problem, Vikram, is at one level we are saying the law is the problem. And what has happened as a repercussion of that is lawlessness. So if you are saying I follow the law so much, then how come you allow slums to happen? That is against the law. So you are justifying both. I think we have become such a scared society of lately that today we are saying that what you just mentioned.
No one wants to take a decision on anything.
I don't want to take a decision because I'll be accused. So we are in a state of complete no movement whatsoever. I mean, it's ridiculous. That leadership means that you will have to take some flack. Leadership means that you will have to rub some people up the wrong way. It is not a goddamn popularity poll. People have suffered to make changes.
Is it that easy, Mr. Chatterjee, or at the end of the day, given the way the cities are structured and our urban centers are structured and the way responsibilities and duties are divided, it's very difficult for someone to display leadership even if they want to because they don't have the powers.
The problem that we're discussing, Vikram, is not just a India-centric problem. It is a worldwide problem, worldwide phenomenon. It's not as if you don't have ghettos in the United States. The question is, we're talking of leadership, and your question was whether the leader could possibly act and act decisively. Was that it?
Yes, and whether there is anybody in our system who has the effective powers to be able to take the decision and get things done.
Yes. One of the other solutions I was thinking of, Vikram, I don't know if it's a far-fetched solution, but then if you cannot do it, forget, if you can't demolish a slum and build a vertical structure or a different structure or give these people a decent form of living, I don't see why it's not possible. And if you can't do that, why not transform the slums, make it legal, declare it legal, and transform it totally for these people, and let legalize things and let it come. There was a time when in Indonesia, if you remember, when they could not control corruption at all, they turned black money into white. That was the solution.
If you see what the NAC, for example, is saying about land acquisition, that, private parties should not get into it at all, let's leave it entirely to the government. Sometimes leaving these things to the market forces can be kinder to the poor than the government sitting and doing it in its own way. Is that, to your mind, one of the solutions, that maybe the way we handle the cities is saying, look, the government is getting out of it a little bit. We've made a mess of it with all our rules and bylaws and this and the others. We are going to regularize, we are going to liberalize, we're going to throw up things a lot more, and somehow, somewhere, the market will make sense of these cities.
Yeah, I think ideally that's how the strategy should be. And personally, I feel that it's not as simple as just purely regularizing it, because let's say a slum, for example, you say you regularize it, you're creating one more market. You're saying that actively you're taking, telling the people that you grab lands and you benefit from it. So it creates its own vicious cycle. So you can't really have this kind of a blanket solution. The real solution actually would be to create alternatives, particularly for Mumbai. And as I said, I'll talk more about Mumbai. The issue with Mumbai is that unless Mumbai expands into the mainland, the shortage of land, howsoever you might increase the FSI, is not going to be enough to absorb the demand that there exists in the city.
Now, sorry, if I could just interrupt you, why not? If you look at, if you go down to downtown Mumbai, if you go to, drive down marine lines, see the buildings, see the height of those buildings, see how dilapidated some of them are. You could actually be putting our Manhattan type buildings right out there. I mean, they'll have water problems and other problems and sewage and the rest of it. But theoretically, you could go vertically, you could fit in a lot more people. But
you've probably seen only that. But what you don't see as much is that 60% of the landmass, 60% of the landmass of Mumbai is actually occupied by slums. So Mumbai needs to expand, create alternatives for people. So the city which has got clogged, congested, virtually is unable to move, needs to now move into the mainland. I think the key thing that the government needs to do is create alternatives, not necessarily liberalize, because liberalization or allowing the wrongdoings to perpetuate is something that creates perverse incentives for future. Therefore, we need to be a little careful about those solutions.
All right. You?
I think I go back to what you said earlier. Should it be left open for the market forces to take its own course, or should the government do it? I have a single point agenda today. I am saying I do not know which one is correct. For either one of them to succeed, it will still require leadership.
Can I just get final comments from the panelists now, and then we will leave it there.
Just two quick comments. I think as far as leadership is concerned, I'm not very sure whether we need to say that youth should take the leadership. I think whosoever carries the legitimacy for leadership, the people should say who's going to be the legitimate person to carry that leadership. I think that's important. The second, which is going to be a slightly critical observation just now, in one of the comments here, I think we'll all have to be taking responsibility for the urban squalor. When I have a house, I need a maid servant. And the cheapest way of getting a maid servant is to get it from the slum. Right? So I am in a way perpetuating, or at least in a way conniving with that entire concept of the urban squalor. We'll have to be prepared now, henceforth, moving forward, that they are not going to be available. It's already started happening, and people are not coming in now. In cities, people are not coming in. A lot of things are happening in the rural areas, skills are getting upgraded, people have to be actually wooed to come into the cities. We're not going to be able to get our maid servants, we're not going to be able to get our plumbers the way we used to get in the past. they will be now living a respectable living and will have to pay for their services. And that's the change I think we will have to be tuned to in the years to come.
Right. Piyush, final
No,
thoughts?
I couldn't agree more with him. I think we are very easily we pay 1,000 rupee tip in a 5-star hotel, but we don't want to increase the salary of a maid servant by 15 rupees because that she's actually trying to fleece you. That's what we think. And I think we need to get to the top of that. There are some great efforts being made, and I happen to be a part of a team which is going to make that skills happen across the country, if not 500 million, immediately 150 million in the next 3 or 4 years. So hopefully there would be a diversion of this population back to where they belong, into better way of living. But yes, back to my one-point agenda, we need leaders.
All right, fine. So Chatterjee, final thoughts?
I quite agree with my co-panelists, particularly Sanjay, in what he said. But I stand by my statement. If you have a problem, you've got to attack it. And if need be, we have to use Machiavellian means to attack it. And the question is very simple. The problem here, the real problem, let us not see the urban sector or the urban side, as an island in its own stream. It's not, in staying in isolation. You see, the rural sector and the heart of rural sector is also our main concern. In short, the real problem, my dear Vikram, is poverty, and that needs to be attacked immediately. Even paradoxically, when we talk of growth at 8%, and perceptions outside are that whatever growth there is, well, that is being pocketed by quite a few people.
All right, thank you so much. Well, normally I hate to end a program where my panelists are in such agreement, but then this is not the big fight, so it's okay. We are happy to have that consensus on this note. Thank you all so much for being with us. The entire question of the freedom of the media, where does that end, where does privacy begin, and whether the media really needs to be regulated or not. And we have a fantastic panel to discuss this. Justice Ahmadi, former Chief Justice of India, Suhel, Seth, Managing Partner of Counselage, Ravina Kohli, Founder and Executive Director of Jobcorp, Kingshuk, Resident Editor, Times of India, Hyderabad, Tully, former Chief of Bureau, BBC, New Delhi. Thank you so much for being with us. And Mr. Utpal Chatterjee, a senior journalist from Kolkata, who's also former Sheriff of Kolkata. Because all of you are going to say this, I'm going to beat you to the punch. But I know all of you are going to be turning to me at some point and saying the media is going down the drain and television is largely to blame for it, and look at the nonsense that is being aired on TV screens night after night. So let me beat you all to the punch and say I agree with you. Samak, I would like to kick off with you, because I think many of us learned journalism from you and from the school of journalism that you really propagated, which was about balance, which was about getting both sides of the story, which was a certain amount of restraint, which was get the facts and tell the facts as they are. Don't necessarily superimpose your own views on that. But today, and not just in India but around the world, that seems to be something which doesn't happen. And how do you see this changing?
I think since I was really active in journalism, technology, we don't understand, has had a huge impact on the media. The other day I was in Bush House and someone said to me, you were lucky to be a correspondent in the day when you had to be a journalist. Now you have to be an actor. And I do think there is far too much what I would call interactive broadcasting going on, where the journalist doesn't have the chance to think about what he's doing. He's consistently being asked questions, whereas our tradition was to write stories, produce little films, produce packages for radio. I would broaden the thing out like this. I don't think that we should regulate ourselves. I think if we look at ourselves as journalists, we are not a profession. You don't have to pass any exam to be a journalist. We can't chuck each other out. No one can say to me or you that, like they can to a barrister or a doctor, you can no longer conduct your profession. Well, the way to look at journalism regulation to say this is a debate between freedom of the press and the right to privacy. This is a middle road which has to be found between the two. And I think that middle road needs to be found very much in consultation with journalists, with other people as well, with civil society, with the government as well. And we do need to have independent regulators.
All right, Ravina?
I just want to make a point that when we have debates about media, we normally refer just to the English media, which is 0.4% of the viewership in this country. The real media out there and all of news channels put together is not more than 10%. There is another media that has evolved, which is social media. And there is no way on earth we are going to ever be able to regulate that. Regulation comes from within somebody's soul as to how they want to say something or how they want to impact another person. And social media being the largest and the most popular form of media consumption, just in the last 6 months.
In a certain section, surely, not...
No. 9 million users on Facebook. Facebook is in every language, for example. Twitter, 10 million, 16 million. It's just growing madly every day. Hindi news channels, other vernacular channels. I mean, the impact is being felt everywhere. So I would like this debate to happen even in non-urban India.
But, Suhel, let me get you in and then get Kingshuk Chatterjee in. Before we say something needs to be regulated, there has to be some sort of a sense of what is right and what is wrong. And that itself has started to change.
Earlier, the brand of journalism did not allow the journalist to interact with such proximity as we see today with all the other pillars of society. You know, in our times, editors were read, they weren't seen. Today, the irony is the chaps on television, other than you, are writing op-ed pieces. The guys who are supposed to be editors of newspapers are on television. So if you want to bring back the BBC brand of journalism, then you've got to be like Mark Tully. When he was on a train, the destination was not this salacious incidents he saw on the train, but it was about the story that he was pursuing.
All right, let me get Kingshuk. I want to get Justice Ahmadi back on a couple of the points that you made with Kingshuk.
The fundamental issue is that India changed, and India changed after 1991. And a lot of money has been pumped because of economic liberalization. While we have had economic liberalization, which is good because we have more entrepreneurs, more money being created, more revenues being created, but at the same time, we have not had political reforms. So we are having an inconsistent system with the old political order continuing with the new economic system. As a result, all these gundas, loafers, whatever, X, Y, Z are in politics today. And these are the same guys who have got huge amount of money, they are starting newspaper channels, etc., etc. This is incompatible. You must have political reforms. Otherwise, you will have half your cabinet in Tihar jail, and that is not possible. Basically, you should start with changing your electoral laws, which is given by the Representation of People's Act 1950 and 51. So this is the fundamental issue. And if you really ask me, does the media need to be regulated? I'll say no, obviously not. Because as Sir Mark Tully said, a journalist is a journalist. He's not like a doctor who's got an MBBS or something like that. And you also know...
But can I just ask you why not? Because just some of the issues that we've heard right now, it's very difficult to get the media to regulate itself, because what one particular house may feel is right or is wrong is not what another one feels. Today, I think there's almost a lynch mob atmosphere which sometimes builds up in this country, and it's partly whipped up by the media. So I do think this is not something which you can just leave and say, oh, you know, let's not.
But who's going to regulate you? The political system is producing corrupt leaders. Are they going to regulate you?
That's another problem. Who's going to regulate it? So if it's not the media itself.
Just one thing to...
And you can't certainly say eminent people from civil society, say award winners should not regulate the media also.
But one thing in support
Otherwise, you have total dictatorship.
But one thing in support of Kingshuk is there's another point. Because you have political leadership and perhaps the justice system doddering, the media has to take it upon itself to highlight causes which would otherwise be swept under the carpet. I mean, look at what happened with the retrial on the Jessica Lal case.
But you can't make this a generalized system. And just let me just get you in before I come to Mr. Chatterjee on this. Yes, the media should highlight issues, should raise issues. Jessica Lal case is one of them. But personally, I get sometimes worried when the entire judicial system is supposed to act on the basis of what's happening in TV studios, and something which I suspect may well be happening now. I mean, the denial of bail, for example, to scam accused, and let me just play devil's advocate out here. Would this have necessarily, I mean, are the courts sometimes being swayed by the fact that this is what is popular, this is what is correct?
I am very of a firm opinion that the court should not get carried away by what the media. In olden days, that is why the English judges say they will not read newspapers. I don't think we can go to that extreme. The judges need to be informed of what is happening. They can't live in an ivory tower. But at the same time, I am of the opinion that they should be able to withstand these pressures.
All right, let's get Mr. Chatterjee in on this. Sir.
Having been a journalist for about near 35 years now, 3.5 decades, let me tell you, a journalist worth his salt, his conscience, he exercises restraint, and he knows he has to inform, and thereby there is a credibility not just of his, but of that of his paper or the organization, which also includes the television. You see, and of course, there are elements which have acted irresponsibly. These people, sooner than later, find themselves out. And because of them, let us not generalize the entire media.
So, Mark, I want to come back to you on what is good journalism today, because there's a fundamental disagreement on that point.
I think that it's very difficult now. You can't, define what is a good journalist now. But I think there are certain things which journalism could avoid now if it wanted to improve the standards. And I do think it is true that, as you rightly indicated in your opening remarks, people don't have much respect for television here. In Britain, I think journalists are rated about as low as estate agents in trustworthiness. And I think that the best way that we could solve this problem, of course, would be that if journalists got together among themselves, senior journalists, and discussed problems regularly and tried to see how things could improve. But the commercial pressures now are so much greater than the journalists. And I always say this, but when I first came to India back in 1965, someone like Frank Murray's editor of the Indian Express or Sri Mulgarkar in the Hindustan Times, if the advertising or the circulation manager wanted to see him, he'd probably have to ask for an appointment and come a week later. Nowadays, it is the audience research people in your business, the circulation managers, the advertising managers, who are virtually telling the television journalists what they should put into the channel.
Today, from being a 1.5 channel industry, there are 312 channels. Okay, revenues have grown. All of a sudden, there is 1,800 crores or more at stake and growing every year. Okay, it has become an industry. The fallout of that is that when responsible journalists were actively engaged in very restrictive job choices, the quality of journalism was actually much higher. And the reason for that is because you could pick and choose and you didn't need so many people. All of a sudden today, the industry employs about 15 to 20,000 young journalists who've had no chance of being groomed, of had the experience. They don't know what's right and wrong, and it's all about immediacy and let's just get the damn thing on air.
All right. Kingshuk?
Today we have English papers where there are journalists who don't know how to write English, speak English. So I agree, this subtle explosion of the media is partly responsible for this problem. And this bogey of lot of pressure on you, on editors from the advertising department and this department is, I think, always exaggerated. That's not the case. There's obviously commercial pressure, but if there is a strong editor, strong journalist, he will withstand that.
All right, thank you all so much.